November 1915, the Tigris River dropped to its seasonal low. Channels that should have carried steamers now scraping hulls against sandbars, forcing crews to offload cargo onto mudflats where draft animals sank to their haunches. General Charles Townshend's 6th Puna Division pushed north toward Baghdad, strung across 400 miles of Mesopotamian flatland under a sun that still scorched by day, before temperatures plunged after dark. The original directive had been precise: protect the Anglo-Persian oil fields at Abadan and establish Basra as a defensive perimeter. Nothing more. But each captured town rewrote the mandate. Kurna fell in December 1914. Amara followed in June. Then Nasiriyah. Each telegram to London invited another question. Why stop now? General Sir John Nixon, commanding from the rear echelons, saw Baghdad not as a strategic objective, but as a trophy. The city's name would echo through Parliament and Delhi. It would justify the campaign's mounting costs. The fact that his supply lines could barely sustain a battalion appeared nowhere in his correspondence. The supply chain didn't collapse at Ctesiphon. It had never been constructed. Private William Hardcastle of the 2nd Norfolk Regiment marched through flatness that never ended. He had grown up in Suffolk, where the land rolled gently toward the sea. Here, the horizon stretched in every direction without interruption. Heat shimmered off packed earth by midday, distorting the silhouettes of date palms into wavering black needles. By nightfall, temperatures plunged so rapidly that frost crystallized on rifle barrels left outside bedrolls. His boots had disintegrated somewhere south of Azazia. The replacements were 2 sizes too large, stuffed with rags torn from a dead mule's blanket. Every step produced a wet, squelching sound. The dust rose from shuffling feet and hung suspended in still air, coating uniforms, weapons, faces, lungs. The taste never left his mouth, alkaline and metallic, like licking a copper penny dipped in chalk. November 22nd, 1915, Ctesiphon. The ancient arch rose against the morning sky as Townshend's 11,000 effectives deployed against Ottoman defensive positions 20 miles from Baghdad. 2 divisions of the Ottoman 6th Army waited behind prepared entrenchments. Their artillery registered on every approach. For 2 days, the 6th Puna Division battered itself against fortified lines. The 17th Brigade took 40% casualties in the first 3 hours. By evening of November 23rd, the Ottomans withdrew. Townshend had won. The cost: 4,600 casualties sprawled across packed earth, 40% of his combat strength. Medical services, designed for a few hundred wounded, received nearly 3,000 men requiring immediate surgery. Surgeons operated by candlelight until dawn, their instruments running out long before their patients. The division could not advance. On November 24th, Townshend ordered retreat to Kut-al-Amara, 85 miles downstream. A tactical victory had produced operational catastrophe. The retreat became a running fight. Ottoman cavalry harried the column's flanks. Wounded men who fell behind disappeared. By December 7th, the remnants staggered into Kut, a river town cradled in a loop of the Tigris. Townshend faced 2 options: continue withdrawing toward Basra, risking annihilation on the march, or dig in and await relief. He chose the siege. He believed relief would arrive within 2 months. He was wrong. Subadar Narayan Singh of the 2nd Rajputs manned a trench facing northeast toward a palm grove the Ottomans used for forward observers. Every dawn, the crack of rifle fire announced their presence. The bullets traveled faster than sound. A man fell before anyone heard the report. Singh learned to keep his head below the sandbag line with the certainty of prey. The cold surprised him. Mesopotamia, in his imagination, had been perpetual desert heat. Instead, December brought rains that transformed trenches into drainage channels. Water pooled at the bottom, rising to ankle depth, then calf depth. His puttees rotted off within a fortnight. The skin beneath turned white and wrinkled, tender to the touch, cracking at the creases. Rations arrived at irregular intervals. Rice, atta flour, a smear of ghee when available. The portions shrank each week, measured now by handfuls rather than servings. At night, Ottoman artillery fired single rounds every few minutes, each explosion jarring men from shallow sleep. The psychological mathematics were precise. One shell killed perhaps 2 or 3 soldiers. The anticipation of the next prevented 800 from resting. By late January, transport animals became food. Horses first, then mules, boiled into gray, stringy stew. For the Indian regiments, the transition ignited agonized debates. Dietary laws, caste obligations, religious prohibitions collided against survival. Some officers negotiated dispensations from religious leaders. Others watched their men refuse meat and weaken accordingly. Starvation eventually eroded distinctions that had governed lifetimes. Captain Arthur Pemberton of the Royal Army Medical Corps pushed through the hospital ward's canvas flap each morning into concentrated misery. Sweat gone rancid, the iron tang of old blood soaked into floorboards. Underneath it all, the sweet rot of gangrenous tissue that antibiotics might have stopped had antibiotics existed. 73 patients occupied a space designed for 20. He performed surgery with kitchen knives, sterilized over candle flames, dressed wounds with strips torn from dead men's uniforms, administered the last morphine to cases beyond hope, simply to quiet their screaming. Dysentery swept through crowded trenches, spread by contaminated Tigris water, the only source remaining. Enteric fever followed, then scurvy, drug supplies exhausted by February, disinfectants gone by March, bandages reduced to torn uniform cloth, washed and reused until they disintegrated. Meanwhile, the Tigris Corps assembled for relief operations. The plan collapsed against geography. The valley in winter became an inland sea, roads dissolving into trackless mud, artillery pieces sinking to their axles within yards of deployment. January 6th, the Battle of Sheikh Saad. Casualties, 4,000. Advance, 3 miles. January 13th, the Wadi. Casualties, 1,600. Advance, unmeasurable. January 21st, Hannah. Casualties, 2,700. The relief force was bleeding out mile by mile. Corporal Thomas McCafferty of the 2nd Black Watch lay in water up to his chest, rifle held above the surface with arms that screamed from effort. The floodplain south of Sheikh Saad had transformed into a lake. The mud at the bottom sucked at his boots with each step, a gelatinous compound of clay and decomposed vegetation. The water itself was brown, opaque, warm despite the January chill. The order came to fix bayonets. McCafferty obeyed with numb fingers. They would charge into rifle fire from positions they could barely see, across ground that would swallow the wounded before anyone could retrieve them. Inside Kut, Rifleman Khadga Bahadur Rai of the 1st 4th Gurkhas had not seen meat in 11 days. The hunger had stages. First came the gnawing emptiness, then the weakness, legs buckling without warning, hands trembling when aiming. Then the fantasies, elaborate imaginings of food that occupied every moment not devoted to survival. His face in the shaving mirror had transformed. Cheekbones protruded beneath taut skin. Eye sockets deepened into shadowed hollows. His uniform hung like a tent from shoulders that no longer filled it. He stopped listening to rumors of relief. He focused on the rifle in his hands, the trench wall in front of him, the next breath. March 8th, Dujaila, the final major relief attempt. Units lost contact in morning mist. Artillery struck empty ground while infantry walked into machine guns. By nightfall, 3,500 more casualties. The relief attempts had cost over 30,000 British and Indian killed, wounded, and missing. More than double the number besieged. April 29, 1916. 147 days after the siege began. Townshend faced a garrison that had ceased functioning. His 11,000 effectives had dwindled to perhaps 7,000 still capable of standing. At 1 p.m., he signed the instrument of surrender. The prisoners included approximately 280 British officers, 2,500 British other ranks, 6,000 Indian soldiers, and several thousand Indian followers whose exact numbers went unrecorded because no one thought to count them. Private James Whitworth of the Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry believed during the siege's worst moments that nothing could exceed the suffering of starvation. The march north corrected that misunderstanding. The column stretched for miles, dust-coated throats already raw from malnutrition. Water breaks occurred at the guards' discretion, which meant rarely. Men fell without warning, crumpling on packed earth. Some the guards kicked upright, others they left. Whitworth stepped around bodies without looking at faces. Sepoy Lakshman Patel of the 104th Wellesley's Rifles understood by the third day that guards had classified prisoners into categories. British officers traveled by cart. British other ranks marched. Indian soldiers marched faster, rested less. Indian followers received no consideration at all. He watched them die with a regularity that acquired its own rhythm, one every mile. The bodies accumulated behind the column, unmarked, unburied, left for dogs and vultures, circling in patient spirals. Townshend's journey differed in every particular. After brief custody, he was transported to Constantinople, to a villa on the Prince's Islands. Multiple rooms, a garden, servants, regular meals on actual plates. He received visitors, conducted correspondence, posed for photographs showing a man well-fed and adequately housed. His men continued dying. Of the 13,000 taken prisoner at Kut, nearly 4,000 would die before the armistice. For Indian other ranks and followers, estimates suggest 70% of certain groups never returned. They died of typhus, cholera, malaria, malnutrition, and accumulated exhaustion. The memorials went up in the 1920s. The Kut Memorial at Amara listed British officers in careful script. Indian soldiers, who comprised the majority of the division, appeared nowhere. No names, no regiments. The Bisties, water carriers who served the garrison under sniper fire, went entirely unrecorded. Their deaths were never tallied. They vanished from history. In Istanbul, April 29th became a date for celebration. Ottoman newspapers framed the victory as proof the empire could humble European powers. A century later, Turkish commemorations would mark Kut as achievement. In London, silence. No monuments, no annual commemorations. Gallipoli generated myths of heroic endurance. Kut generated nothing. Havildar Muhammad Iqbal of the 120th Rajputana Infantry reached Constantinople In September 1916, of the 340 men in his company who marched out of Kut, 47 remained. He survived by becoming invisible, worked without complaint, ate whatever appeared. The war ended in October 1918. He returned to his village. No parade welcomed him. 50 years later, his grandson asked about the war. Iqbal shook his head and changed the subject. The siege lived in his body, in the scars on his feet, in dreams that woke him at night, but it would never live in official history. He died in 1971, his name absent from every memorial. Lieutenant Edward Spackman stood in the column waiting to surrender. The guards arrived mid-morning and began the march. 20 miles north, his legs folded beneath him. He found himself on hands and knees, staring at dust, unable to summon strength to stand. A guard's boot appeared in his peripheral vision. The boot drew back. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe for more World War historical deep dives every week. Thanks for watching.